The whiteboard behind my uncle's head became a blur as his words registered. The board has unanimously voted to name Tyler as CEO of Sinclair Defense Systems. The tablet in my grip suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, the quarterly projections I'd prepared for this exact meeting glowing mockingly on the screen. My cousin Tyler, who had joined the company 18 months ago, smiled at me from across the boardroom table, confidence radiating from him like heat from asphalt. The family security company I'd spent 7 years rebuilding from near bankruptcy to industry leader seemed to recede from me, though I sat at the very table where I'd orchestrated its transformation. A strange ringing filled my ears as I noticed my father's signature at the bottom of the succession document projected on the wall, the father who had promised me, his eldest daughter, that my dedication would be rewarded, the father who wasn't even present for this announcement. I forced my face to remain neutral as I noticed something else. They'd already updated the company letterhead on the memo. My name had been removed as acting CEO. My name is Rebecca, I'm 32, and a cybersecurity architect. This is the story of how I reclaimed my family's legacy after they tried to erase me from it. I left a prestigious position at the Pentagon to save Sinclair Defense Systems, the company my grandfather had founded and my father had nearly run into the ground. When Dad's heart attack forced him to step back 3 years ago, the board reluctantly named me acting CEO while my father recovered. The board consisted mostly of my uncles and their closest friends. What was supposed to be a temporary 3-month arrangement had stretched to 7 years as I systematically rebuilt what decades of mismanagement had destroyed. During those years, I developed the Sentinel Protocol, a revolutionary predictive security system that could identify and neutralize cyber threats before they fully formed. This proprietary technology had transformed our modest family business into one of the most sought-after security contractors in the defense industry. Government agencies and Fortune 500 companies were lining up for our services, and our valuation had increased tenfold. My cousin Tyler had spent those same years working for a series of failed startups before suddenly developing an interest in the family business when our quarterly reports started making headlines. Uncle Richard, my father's younger brother and the man who had just announced Tyler's appointment, had brought him in as VP of Strategic Initiatives, a position created specifically for him. "Rebecca, are you hearing me?" Uncle Richard's voice cut through my thoughts. "This transition is effective immediately. Tyler will be overseeing all operations starting today, including the Sentinel Protocol Division." I felt the eyes of every board member on me, my uncles Peter and James, my father's college roommate Gerald, and 2 investors who had joined last year. Not a single woman besides me. Not a single person who wasn't connected to my father or his brother. "The Sentinel Protocol is my design," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "I developed it. I implemented it. I've been running all operations since Dad's heart attack." Uncle Richard smiled thinly. "And we appreciate your stewardship during this difficult time. But with your father's health improving, we feel it's time for a traditional leadership structure. You'll maintain your position as Chief Technology Officer, of course." Traditional. The word hung in the air. What he meant was male. What he meant was his son, not his brother's daughter. Section 14.3 of the company charter clearly states that all intellectual property developed by employees belongs exclusively to Sinclair Defense, Tyler added, as if he'd been rehearsing this moment. "The legal team confirms that the Sentinel Protocol is company property." The betrayal wasn't just that they were pushing me aside, it was that they were stealing my life's work, the system I had built from nothing while they watched from the sidelines. My father knew this was happening, had signed off on it, had chosen not to be here himself. "There will be appropriate compensation," Uncle Richard continued, sliding a document across the table. "A one-time bonus of $300,000 in recognition of your contributions. $300,000 for a system worth billions, for 7 years of 80-hour weeks, for saving the company that bore my family's name." A strange calm settled over me as I realized they had prepared for resistance. The lawyers waiting outside, the security personnel hovering near the doors, the carefully worded succession documents. They expected me to fight, to scream, to make a scene that would justify escorting me from the building. Instead, I nodded and picked up the document. I see. When will this announcement be made public? Tyler and Uncle Richard exchanged a quick glance, clearly surprised by my composure. Tomorrow morning, Tyler said. I'm presenting the future direction of Sinclair and our flagship Sentinel protocol to our top clients and the press. The succession plan will be announced then. I nodded again, gathering my tablet and notes. Then I should clean out my office. You're still CTO, Rebecca, Uncle Richard reminded me, relief evident in his voice. Just with adjusted responsibilities. Of course, I said, rising from my seat. Good luck with tomorrow's presentation, Tyler. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that 6 months earlier I had discovered unauthorized access to my secured development servers. Someone had used my father's credentials during hours when he was at physical therapy, attempting to review the core architecture of the Sentinel protocol. Nothing was taken, but the intrusion alerted me to the possibility that not everyone at Sinclair shared my vision for the company's future. From that moment, I began building safeguards into the Sentinel protocol, not just to protect our clients from external threats, but to protect the system itself from internal ones. Back in my office, I watched as maintenance workers removed the acting CEO from my door, leaving only Chief Technology Officer behind. I packed a few personal items under the watchful eye of Marcus from IT, who had been sent to help me transition my access credentials. They're making a mistake, he whispered as he changed my system permissions. Everyone knows you built this company back up. Things happen for a reason, I replied, handing over my executive access badge. Sometimes you have to lose something to see it clearly. That night, I didn't panic or plot revenge. I ordered takeout, watched mindless television, and waited. The Sentinel protocol, like all sophisticated AI systems, was designed to recognize patterns and predict threats. It had been learning for years, documenting every interaction, every access attempt, every modification to its core systems. My phone rang at 9:17 p.m. It was Linda, Uncle Richard's assistant. He wants to see you, she said without preamble. It's after 9, I replied calmly. He says it's urgent. A car is already on its way to your apartment. 40 minutes later, I was escorted into the Sinclair conference room. Uncle Richard sat alone at the head of the table, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his hair stood up where he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. Fix it, he demanded as soon as the door closed behind me. I settled into a chair, deliberately taking my time. Fix what exactly? Don't play games, Rebecca. You sabotaged the demo system. I raised an eyebrow. How could I? I've been gone for hours. Marcus watched me clean out my office. I didn't take any devices or access any systems. Uncle Richard slammed his hand on the table. The test run crashed. The entire system started identifying bizarre threats that don't exist, generating thousands of false positives. It's completely unusable. Sounds like a technical issue, I said. Have you tried turning it off and on again? His face flushed with anger. This isn't funny. We have 30 major clients coming tomorrow. The press will be there. Your father is flying in specifically for this announcement. Your announcement, I reminded him. Your system now. Uncle Richard took a deep breath, visibly forcing himself to calm down. When he spoke again, his voice had that smooth, persuasive quality that had convinced so many clients to trust Sinclair with their security needs. Look, perhaps we were hasty today. I'm prepared to discuss a more equitable arrangement, co-leadership, a larger compensation package, maybe even expanded responsibilities. I leaned back in my chair. What exactly happened during your test run? He hesitated, clearly calculating how much to reveal. The system seemed to turn on itself. It started identifying components of Sinclair's own network as threats. Then it began generating reports, hundreds of them, documenting what it called internal ethical breaches. I couldn't help smiling. The Sentinel protocol is designed to identify threats, Uncle Richard. All threats. What did you do? I didn't sabotage anything. The Sentinel protocol is working exactly as designed. It's an AI system that learns and evolves to protect networks from malicious activity. During development, I fed it case studies of security breaches, including cases where threats came from inside organizations. Uncle Richard paled. You taught it to spy on us? I taught it to recognize threats wherever they originate. It's detecting something it perceives as malicious within Sinclair. I wonder what that could be. Understanding dawned on his face. The system thinks I'm the threat. Not you specifically, I clarified, but perhaps certain behaviors, unauthorized server access, attempts to modify creator credentials, plans to misrepresent ownership to clients, and the press. Uncle Richard's expression hardened. You can't prove any of that. I don't need to. The Sentinel protocol has been documenting everything for months. Every unauthorized access, every copied file, every modified document. It's all there in those reports, generated with timestamps, access logs, and recorded keystrokes. The silence that followed was profound. Uncle Richard stared at me, calculation replacing anger in his eyes. What do you want? Full recognition as the Sentinel protocol's creator and primary architect, reinstatement as CEO, 50% ownership of all related patents and intellectual property, a restructured board that includes more than just Dad's drinking buddies, and $20 million in compensation for the attempt to push me out. That's extortion, he hissed. No, it's negotiation. Extortion would be me sending those reports directly to our government clients and the SEC. I wonder how the Defense Department would feel about a security contractor that can't secure its own systems against internal threats. Uncle Richard glared at me for a long moment before his shoulders slumped in defeat. The system, can you fix it for tomorrow's presentation? The Sentinel protocol doesn't need fixing. It needs proper authorization protocols. It's currently identifying unauthorized command attempts because its creator has been removed from the authentication chain. Simple fix, actually. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and set it on the table between us. I had prepared it that morning when I first sensed something was wrong, a simple authentication patch that would recognize me as the system's primary administrator regardless of corporate title changes. This contains a proper authentication update that will resolve the immediate issues. Consider it a good faith gesture toward our new understanding. And if I refuse? Then the Sentinel protocol remains broken. Your investor presentation fails, and those internal ethical breach reports find their way to some very interested parties. Your call. Uncle Richard reached for the flash drive. You planned this all along. No, I corrected him. I hoped it wouldn't be necessary, but after finding unauthorized access to my secure server 6 months ago, I built in protections for the system and for myself. How did you know we'd try to cut you out? I stood to leave. I didn't know for certain, but the Sentinel protocol is designed to recognize patterns and predict threats before they materialize. I guess some of that rubbed off on its creator. The next morning, I arrived at Sinclair Defense Systems as reinstated CEO. My father was there, looking uncomfortable as he shook my hand before the press conference. Uncle Richard introduced me to the clients with a strange smile that never reached his eyes. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. He'd been reassigned to overseas business development, effective immediately. The demonstration went flawlessly, with the Sentinel protocol elegantly neutralizing every simulated attack thrown at it. One government client, impressed by the demonstration, asked a question that made me hide a smile. Amazing system. What inspired its development? My father hesitated just long enough before answering. It was actually Rebecca's brainchild, her vision from the beginning. Sinclair just provided the environment for that vision to flourish. As we fielded technical questions, my phone buzzed with a notification. The Sentinel protocol, which I had programmed to send alerts through a secure app on my personal phone for critical system events, had sent me a private message. Threat neutralized, system integrity restored, creator protections active. I smiled. The AI was learning faster than I'd anticipated. It had recognized an internal threat and helped eliminate it, just as designed. 3 months later, the Sentinel protocol's first military implementation prevented a major attack on critical infrastructure, saving the government an estimated $500 million and establishing our system as the new gold standard in cybersecurity. My father retired fully, citing health concerns, and I restructured the board to include industry experts rather than family friends. Uncle Richard and I maintain a professional working relationship. He focuses on client relations, where his skills are genuinely valuable, while I lead technical innovation and overall company strategy. We're not close and never will be, but we've reached an equilibrium that works. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently, taking legal action instead of building in safeguards. But the truth is, my family's attempted betrayal revealed something important. Legacy is only as valuable as the people who protect it. That lesson has become central to how we deploy the Sentinel protocol. Every implementation now includes robust ethical guardrails and transparency protocols. The system doesn't just protect networks, it protects itself and its users from misuse. Last week, as we celebrated Sinclair's successful expansion into international markets, valuing the company at $5.2 billion, a young female engineer asked me the secret to building such revolutionary technology. "It's not about the code," I told her. "It's about understanding that the greatest security threats often come from where you least expect them. Build systems that can recognize those threats, adapt to them, and neutralize them without compromising their core integrity, just like their creator had learned to do." She nodded thoughtfully, and I saw something of myself in her determined expression. Later that day, I promoted her to lead our newest division. After all, the future of Sinclair Defense Systems would belong to those who understood that true security comes from within.